from being dubbed as the highlight of the UFC to absolutely destroying fighters like Tony Ferguson. Here's why fighters should be terrified of Justin Gaethje. When you're watching a fight with Gaethje in it, you will be entertained. He'll make sure that you get at least one major highlight here, if not many more. He's a superstar who's become insanely popular in the past few years. You don't get to be a fan favorite without giving the fans something to root for, that's for sure. But you know what's the key to being an entertaining fighter in the UFC? It's not about the controversy, unlike what Conor McGregor might have you believe. A real entertaining fighter is one who scares the heck out of his opponents and is great at what he does. That's exactly what Justin's like. He's the most destructive guy in the sport today, and there's a lot that goes into it. Not only is Gaethje incredibly trained, but he's also very tough, mentally speaking. Just watch him going at it in the octagon. It's like nothing else matters. That guy can easily block out any distraction, any pain, and do whatever it takes to win. Let's not forget he's super athletic too, with godlike speed that's typically uncommon for fighters. So if you think your favorite fighter is great, just remember that Justin will always be a step ahead. After all, he has one of the best coaches in MMA, Trevor Wittman. In case you don't know Trevor, the man's a mastermind. His and Justin's game plans have always been brilliant, getting the fighter great results. Wittman is Justin's biggest supporter in the octagon, always backing him up. And I know what you're thinking. Of course he supports the fighter. He's literally his coach. That doesn't mean that Justin's really as good as he says. You'd be right. Except Trevor isn't the only coach who's commended Justin. Khabib Nurmagomedov's trainer, Javier Mendez, is right up there too. Imagine being so good that your rival's coach has to give you compliments even after you've lost. Mendez was the one who prepped Khabib in that fight, and he said that even Khabib, being the GOAT that he is, I couldn't have beaten Justin without putting in a lot of work. That's what you need if you want a chance against that fighter. Javier revealed that he and Nurmagomedov spent every day working out how to defend Gaethje's incredible kicks. Mendez also said that Justin's a very strategic fighter who knows his stuff. He's not just being aggressive for no reason. As Javier correctly pointed out, Justin's always got a plan, and taking him down is never easy, even for people like Khabib. Gaethje may have lost that fight, but he's still got plenty more wins that more than make up for it. Mendez also talked about Justin's relentlessness in the ring and how he'll never stop fighting until the last moment. His commitment to his game has been praised by other great fighters, like Eddie Alvarez. That's because Justin always has undying faith in him and his strategies. You can see it in his eyes even when the guy is battered and damaged. He never thinks that he's failing, even for one moment, and he definitely doesn't submit. Some of you may say that that's called being reckless, but it's really not. It's being dedicated to your game, to your fans, and to your coach. Sure, tons of other fighters are dedicated too, but what makes Justin so great is that he isn't afraid to be damaged in the process. He's incredible at defense, but he never compromises on the offensive side of his game. Gaethje will take all the punches you throw at him, but he'll also show you that he can throw many more punches himself. You just don't get an easy way out with this guy. After all, there's a reason that the UFC president is backing him up. Dana White's the kind of guy who gives out very few compliments to people other than himself. But even he couldn't hold back from calling Justin the complete package. And how could he have? Just look at Justin's accolades. That guy has won Fight of the Night 6 times and Performance of the Night 3 times. You don't get that without being all-rounded. And as White rightfully pointed out, Justin's got power on both offense and defense. He's got great leg kicks and unbelievable knockout power to crush his opponents. And he also has a chin of steel to protect him from being crushed. As Dana said, it doesn't get any more dangerous than that. But if White's testament isn't enough for you, let's hear it from Michael Chandler, shall we? Chandler lost to Gaethje in 2021, and he had a lot to say about his opponent's style. Chandler actually experienced how Justin's takedown defense was much better than he'd even anticipated. He noted how he could never find openings to knock Justin off his feet, even though he had a plan and had been training for it for months. But he failed to take into account his opponent's excellent movements in the ring. The way Gaethje would dip his head at the very last minute while throwing left hooks and overhand rights made it impossible for Chandler to get anything in. Michael also mentioned that his rival had great wrestling skills that show when he's out there. That's no surprise, considering that the guy was a wrestling star in college. Justin wrestled in Division I when he was studying at the University of Northern Colorado, and he even qualified for the NCAA Division I championship in both his junior and senior years. He'd been great long before anyone else had even started. But coming back to what Chandler said, you all know that someone complimenting his rival after losing is extremely rare in MMA. It just shows the power Justin holds over everyone. And while we remember this win, let's also take a look at some of Gaethje's performances in the ring that prove there's truly no one better. What better fight to start with than his crazy UFC debut against Michael Johnson? That fight was Justin's first step into the UFC, and it was the best impression he could have made. By defeating Johnson, who was a pretty solid opponent himself, Gaethje showed everyone that he was here to stay and make his mark. And those 2 rounds were everything. Justin started with leg kicks and body shots in round 1, following with a colossal uppercut in the second, which seriously broke his opponent down. Johnson was forced against the cage walls. From there, it only took Justin a few final shots to defeat him and show everyone that he wasn't to be taken lightly. Unfortunately, it looks like some people didn't pay close attention to this fight. I'm talking about James Vick here. You remember Justin's win against Vick at UFC Fight Night 135, right? How can you even forget? James Vick is a living, breathing example of why you need to take Justin seriously. If you don't and continue to trash talk him as if you're some god, then it'll only take Justin less than 2 minutes to be done with you. Vick called Justin the Homer Simpson of the MMA, but it literally took this Homer Simpson 87 seconds to knock his Texan opponent out with a mighty right-hand punch. He picked him apart bit by bit, and his performance sent a very clear message to every fighter. Be very afraid of Gaethje, whether you're a loud-mouthed nobody like Vick or an actual big shot like Tony Ferguson. Justin can obliterate pretty much anyone he wants. His May 2020 win against Ferguson was perhaps the best performance of his career. But you know what makes it even better? Justin was listed as a massive underdog going into this bout, but he still won. And this wasn't just any simple win. It was one of the best performances the UFC had seen in a long time. It was against someone like Tony, who was coming into that fight with a 12-fight win streak. Justin really managed to do the unbelievable. His footwork, crushing leg kicks, and destructive punching power made El Cucuy look like an amateur. He was battered in every round, and by the end of the night, both of his eyes were swollen, and he had a huge mark on his face. The outcome was so crazy that goats like Nurmagomedov said that Tony was finished. Khabib said that such a brutal beating by Gaethje had marked the end for Ferguson, who'd never be the same again. And honestly, that goes for everyone who plans on fighting Justin. So there you have it. From absolutely destroying fighters like Tony Ferguson to being called the highlight because of his crazy performances. That was why every fighter should be really scared of Justin Gaethje.